Thanks for tuning in to this recap edition of Fox on West Virginia Mountaineer Sports, as our beloved Mountaineers unfortunately fall on the road to the Arizona State Sun Devils 25-22 in Tempe, Arizona. As you can tell, I'm recording from a hotel balcony here, having attended the game in person myself, so if you hear any ambient noise in the background or cars just speeding down the highway here, it is a very active city. So I will bear with me here as I got my nice setup on a pool. I'm out by the rooftop pool here to record this one, but it's kind of crazy. Didn't think I was going to have enough time to be able to record anything. So by the time that I get home back to Canonsburg, this is going to be well put into distant memory, and you're not going to want to listen to me and having seen this game yourselves. So I just wanted to come on here and give some of my analysis and final thoughts from this game, because I think there's now, based upon what I've seen on social media since the game has ended to now, is there's two different types of opinion on why West Virginia lost this game between those who watched it on TV and those who tuned in person. So I'm glad that I can give you the perspective from some of the other YouTube content creators who may not have been here in person to take this all in. So what is what are you talking about, Carson, if you haven't been paying attention to social media, doing something else with your Saturday? So this game being just a 25-23 game at the end of the day, this game was won on the margins. The very few little things that needed to be done to win a game, West Virginia just didn't convert on. And what it comes down to really was a few decisions that were made by head coach Rich Rodriguez to go for it on a couple of fourth downs early, and then also a 2-point conversion play when West Virginia had scored a touchdown. Instead of kicking an extra point, going for two and not coming up with it instead. Arizona State did not play the greatest of games, especially offensively. Really got hot in the second quarter, but then kind of sputtered out in the second half, and West Virginia's defense stood on its head. Only allowed 3 points in the second half. And then the first quarter, West Virginia's offense owned the time of possession, so much so that it just felt like Arizona State did all of its damage in the second quarter. And again, West Virginia picked up started out hot and then really finished strong. It was just that second quarter where they really started to come alive. So what I'll say and start out is from the very first defensive possession, West Virginia wins the toss to first to the second half and comes out and gets a 3-and-out stop easy. And at this point in time in the game, Arizona State's fans had not really flooded into Mountain America Stadium the way that most people would think. Now, I know as West Virginia fans get on the students and everything for, showing up right at kickoff or after and kind of filling in. Same thing kind of happened here with Arizona State. It was an 11 a.m. kickoff. Felt very early, even for someone who's been here for the last few days in the state of Arizona. Being able to adjust to the time zone difference and being 2 hours behind is a little bit easy. Still a little bit challenging having a 1-year-old getting up and going to the game, but it was just it just felt really early. I've never been to a college football game with an 11 a.m. kickoff. So they're grilling hot dogs and hamburgers, and I don't want anything of it. I want a morning coffee and breakfast sandwich or something like that, and that was not to be had at the stadium. So what I'm telling you all this backstory is to say is that Arizona State did, from the fan base to the players, they were sleepwalking. It felt like a Northwestern-ish kind of noon kickoff kind of game. Beautiful day, but I'm just telling you, they were a little bit slow to get rolling in this game, whereas I thought, and I was wondering this, is if West Virginia was going to travel on Thursday to trying to adjust a little bit more, or travel on Friday, go to bed early potentially, to then because your body clock is earlier to start to get up for an early kick, and that's exactly what West Virginia did. So West Virginia, from the first defensive possession, seemed as if it was more adjusted for this game than Arizona State, the home team, and their home crowd. So you get a stop, you drive right down the field and get all the way into the red zone. It just looked like West Virginia was chugging along. But Arizona State's defense, as we talked about in the preview video earlier this week, top 40 total defense in the country, scoring defense only around 24 points per game. So it had this feel from the very get-go in this stadium that it was going to be a low-scoring affair. So I've seen a lot of people all say, I've seen them most saying you like Rich Rodriguez's aggressiveness there to go for it and try and win the game on the road as an underdog and all of those things. I'm saying from the first try, it was a long 4th and 2. You'd already gone. It was a very rush-heavy series on that drive. You'd already gone to Curtis Jones, I think, once on the play prior, and then he comes up just about a yard or a half a yard empty on 4th down. I would have liked if Coach Rodriguez would have just kicked a field goal there. Truly, I think you take the points because you got a field goal, go up 3-0. I would have liked West Virginia to get 6. Because then that's when Arizona State started to get rolling into the second quarter, kind of found a couple of big plays that they needed to get going and get up by multiple scores. So not only did you not convert on the first 4th down, but you didn't get the second one. If West Virginia was going to try for it on the first 4th down, they were going to definitely try for it on the second because you felt as if at that point in time, Arizona State, team that's kind of burgeoning on top 25 in the nation, they're at home. Maybe they finally get some things rolling. Jeff Sims, big, strong, 6'4", 220 runner. Rayleigh Brown had, not at this point in time, but, again, 3rd in the Big 12 in rushing yards for the season. So it just felt like, okay, maybe Arizona State, you put your neck out there so many times for this West Virginia defense. You don't know sometimes what you're going to get. Even though these last few weeks have been great since the TCU game has been a completely different change to the season, and it has been wonderful. But just being on the road, you're just a little bit worried. And I think that's what Coach Rodriguez was just about worried about. Let's try and get the points here, and I understand it, but Arizona State's defense was just too good. For 4 quarters, they were a very talented, especially front 7, holding West Virginia with, I think, around 98 yards gained. That's not their net, but yards gained in their rush department. West Virginia had 39 carries for only 98 positive yards, and then lost Scotty Fox's sack yardage, 29. So that's where Coach Rodriguez was furious about this. West Virginia's offensive line was doing everything that it could out there. I don't think it was a bad push by any means. It was just Arizona's front 7 could really stand on its head. They had some talent there, and so that's why West Virginia, I was thankful that they attacked, got Jeff Weimer involved, and scored that 75-yarder to cut it back, from 15, I think, to 10 at that point in time. And then, of course, Arizona State looked as if they were going to start to pour it on with the Rayleigh Brown touchdown right before halftime. So you went into the half down 22-10 and this kind of felt like on the precipice of being a blowout. But it was such a tale of two halves. So if you would have had some of those points, I feel like earlier in the contest, that would have made up for, they would have had a lead going, or 22-16. That's a one-score game going into the half. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. And I know it's not like the butterfly effect with Ashton Kutcher's, famous movie of 20 years ago that, okay, if West Virginia kicks a field goal there, how does we know that the rest of the game plays out the way that it does? You don't. Okay, you're just saying the completely obvious answer here there. But I'm just saying, in a game that felt as if it was going to be a low-scoring, take-the-under kind of defensive struggle from the onset, I thought points were at a premium, that you needed to take those points there with those field goals. That's just my argument. If you disagree with me, I'd love to know why. Please leave your comments here on YouTube. And now I'm 9 minutes or so into this contest, so please like this video so more Mountaineer fans can see it, and hopefully we can have this debate around the internet, and love to have you a subscriber to my channel. But I was just really proud of the comeback. Again, West Virginia's defense stands on its head, only giving up 3 points in the second half, getting a huge 4th down stop when West Virginia absolutely needed it to turn the tide, to win the ball game. Sincere Bowers' 90-yard catch and score for a touchdown was probably the most electric play that West Virginia's had since the Hudson Clement should have been game-winning touchdown against Houston a couple of seasons ago. That was fantastic. So between Scotty Fox's 75-yard completion to Jeff Weimer for a touchdown in the first half, then the 90-yard reception to Sincere Bowers, that made up, 165 of his total 353 passing yards on the day. Now, Scotty held onto the ball a little long in this contest, I thought just a couple of ticks too long, and I think the reason why he did so is because why is he taking so many carries on the quarterback run? I mean, there was I think it was either on the last possession or the second to last possession, he takes off on a quarterback run to the sidelines and slides down and for a 2nd and 10, and everybody's, all the fans in my section, we're all just looking at each other like, what are we doing here? Scotty, I like the play calls so far this season. I don't want to necessarily, I've liked the majority of them. Let me put it to you this way. But it's just, if you're going to use that kind of a play call, can you, and I alluded to this, and I thought we might see it Thursday, whenever I recorded my preview video, is maybe you brought Khalil Wilkins in some of those plays. I know that he's coming off injury, but he was fresh last week, good enough to play. Now on the road, doesn't play again. Could you use that 2-quarterback system that you've been using all season long to go away for it for some of those quarterback-designed runs? Now, I know that's kind of a dead giveaway, they want to bring Wilkins onto the field for his rushing ability rather than throwing, but I'm telling you right now, the opposite way for Arizona State is you didn't trust Jeff Sims to throw. I'll tell you exactly how Arizona State's defense or offensive system went all game long. They had the weirdest kind of snap. It wasn't like a direct snap back to Sims. The center snapped the ball, kind of floated it high. It just felt like it was always a little bit high to Sims and a little bit delayed. So when he would take the snap back, you already given about half a second or so of a draw in by the defensive line. Then he would either hold on and keep it himself or hand off to Rayleigh Brown, and it just seemed like he was constantly being pushed back into by his offensive line. But no, that was the idea of the offense, is to give as much of a read on the holes that could be created as to whether to give to Brown or keep it himself. So that's where I'm just thinking to myself, how many times that West Virginia just ran into a brick wall, and when they did so with Scotty Fox, there just wasn't enough gas in the tank there. I think that he was just using so much of an effort. He got hit a lot on this day, 3 sacks. He took even more hits after he released the ball in this contest. So I just think he took some unnecessary hits that's now taken a toll to him. Got to remember that he is a true freshman. He is 18 years old, into his first game against playing some really tough opponents. And this ASU defense, I'm telling you, was as good of a defense as West Virginia's played all season. I would think it'd have to be up there with Utah, BYU, even Pitt's defense, and TCU's. And so from a passing standpoint, not bad on this day. I think he had some drops from his receivers. Seemed like West Virginia kind of figured it out in the second half, getting Gerard Bowie more involved in this game. Grayson Barnes, and then, of course, Sincere Bowers coming away with that big play that West Virginia needed it when it absolutely needed to. Also really proud of the special teams getting up, blocking a field goal, the first one that really gave West Virginia a chance to even, get in that game. And then the last thing I really want to, I don't know, some other thoughts that might come to my head. Just just facepalm, Braden Siders, my man. Oh, you've been so good this season. But you get knocked down flat on your face, on your stomach forward, and then you army crawl off after Jeff Sims, and you barrel into his knee for an completely obvious roughing the passer call that gave the pivotal 15 yards after West Virginia got after Sims or Brown on the previous play for just a 4-yard pickup, but you give them the necessary, or the 15 yards to keep the chains moving from going from a 3 and out. They drive down just far enough, and we talked about on the preview show, Jesus Gomez, an excellent kicker, 18 for 24 on the season. He's had a lot of attempts, and he drills it from 48 yards to come through with it. It's just he dumbed dumb. You didn't need that. I know, like, West Virginia had a terrible holding call on the previous offensive possession. That's, whenever Bowers, then, after a Scotty Fox sack with the holding call, ended up getting the Bowers play for a touchdown. So, it kind of feels like that penalty didn't really have much of an effect on the outcome of that series. But in totality, just some penalties ill-advised at the times that they needed. Maybe it is arguably that one is different, or the 30 yards of pass personal fouls that were called against Fred Perry earlier in the contest. The first one that he got called for was like the running back was picked up off the ground by the time the referee blew the whistle. So by him, he had him up in the air. What's he just going to let him go or something like that? Yes, of course, drilling him to the ground on top of it, came off, of course, in Arizona State's building as unnecessary roughness. But I'm telling you, if you're stopping the play, you have to blow the whistle earlier in this contest. And I'm not going to put it on the refs or anything, but it just seemed as if in this game, especially early on, there was a Justin Smith-Brown would have been reception for a first down that the referees didn't blow the whistle, and I just thought, okay, all right, they're establishing a precedence here. This is what, if they're going to let anything go for this game, then you better call it both ways. You better stick to it. And it just seemed like this refereeing crew was inconsistent. And then some of those bigger calls went against West Virginia. The Perry personal foul in that situation. And then, down the road with the holding and the roughing the passer and stuff like that. So got called a little, more calls in the second half than it was kind of like a feeling out process. It felt like the first. And then the 2-point conversion play when West Virginia scored to try and go up 3. I don't know what the hell that was. Just so you left points on the board between the two potential field goals that you could have went for, that instead you go for it on fourth down plays. And what did I talk about? How out of play action plays. That's how Arizona State scored its first touchdown, and West Virginia, when it tried the fourth down play, covered up completely, very nicely by the Arizona State defense. So you don't get the 2-point conversion. You left points on the board there, plus the 2 potential field goals. You had this game maybe 30-25, something like that. Otherwise, I'm just incredibly, proud of the Mountaineers and the effort that they gave, especially. And the other thing, I guess, to come back to why is, to belabor my point about the field goals, is if you watch the first series, how many first 2 series, 2 or 3 in just the whole first quarter, really, is it seemed as if Coach Rodriguez was playing for the fourth quarter. So I was like, okay, I understand what he's doing here from an offensive schematic and game script kind of flow to this contest. But if you're playing for the fourth quarter, then wouldn't that then mean, you're putting points at a premium? So if you're just trying to get what you can in the first half to gas Arizona State, wear them down defensively, then by the fourth quarter, you're able to assert your will, take advantage, and take your strikes. So that's what was a little incoherent to me that didn't make sense, is why you go for it on fourth down instead of kicking the field goal, is because it just seemed like that's what West Virginia was trying to set itself up for. I also think Dior Hubbard was hurt. He only had 2 carries in this contest. 2 carries for 7 yards after, again, a lot of usage last week against Colorado, the week prior against Houston. Sincere Bowers was leaned upon more so, only had 3.2 yards per carry average on this day, longest run of 6. So Curtis Jones did come away with a touchdown. Absolutely love that. I think he is the power back of next year. You don't need to go onto the open market and go and find another Ty Edwards and allocate the NIL dollars. You can put it into Jones, who can contribute both defensively and offensively at running back. Those two-way players that everybody talked about last week, that I've been talking about for a year. So, from just what an effort by West Virginia. All those things that needed to happen there in transitioning from the third quarter to the fourth quarter, you got the touchdown that you needed to first. Then you get the Sincere Bowers play, the field goal block, It's just like those itty-bitty little... That's what it comes down to, those itty-bitty little, like, again, winning on the margins kinds of plays. That's how the game broke, is that West Virginia just didn't have those little things that were needed that then Arizona State came away with on the day. And like I said, they didn't do anything complex. They didn't do anything complicated. They didn't look all that much better than West Virginia on this day. It was very even. It got the necessary breaks when it needed to in the second quarter. Didn't turn the ball over. That was really important. West Virginia did get a fumble but didn't recover. It kind of went right back to Jeff Sims, forced him to fumble, went on a quarterback running back exchange, and then also in the fourth quarter, you thought that was a fumble, the way he got hit behind the line of scrimmage, and I think because that's where the referees brought the ball back to, they didn't call it a fumble on the field. They called him down by contact behind the line of scrimmage, turnover on downs. West Virginia ended up getting the ball. So that was one of the keys to victory. I felt like the West Virginia needed to come away with a turnover. That was just like one of those things in your pocket. West Virginia did have a turnover on the very last play, but that wasn't a pass. It was just, I didn't like that play call. I didn't really like that whole series at all. The West Virginia's last offensive series to try and win the game. It was really just Arizona State standing on their head, coming up, filling the gaps, sticking to their assignments, hitting Gerard Bowie before the line of scrimmage. And then Jeff Weimer comes across on a slant route, and they weren't going to get a call, so he had to be more physical there. Scotty put the ball kind of where it needed to be, that if there was going to be a completion, it would have been for a first down, but just out a little bit past the outstretched arms of Jeff Sims. The Arizona State defense makes cornerback just makes a great play on it, comes away with an interception, and that's all she wrote. So this is one of those games that if this was a more veteran, more experienced West Virginia team, I would have been a little more pissed about it. I would have been a little more heated. I think we would have had I think it would have been a victory. But because, again, you're down to your fourth string true freshman quarterback. You're down to how many running backs West Virginia's been depleted of this year. Yes, your offensive line is stepping up and finally catching its stride, I feel like, in the second half of the season. So is your defense and stuff like that. But at your running back and we just know how important that the quarterback and running back are to West Virginia's offense. So to be at this point, if you had Jaheim White out there and the same kind of ability out of Nico that he could show it, or I'll say healthy, because of just he did have that foot injury earlier in the season. But you would have expected this to be a Nico Marchiol, Jaheim White led type of game, and you're not. So instead, we're talking about these other players, and these other players freaking stepped up. Scotty Fox stepped up. Another 300-yard passing game as a true freshman, taking Arizona State to the wire. You get a huge play out of Sincere Bowers, who was a guy that I said, I don't even know if I want to see him in a Mountaineer uniform next season because of the fumbles that he's had this season. But I think that play just shows he has that type of games, breakaway, burner kind of speed in space, and he proved it on a reception for 90 yards. So absolutely loved that. Just loved the effort that West Virginia gave on this day. Just those itty-bitty little things, just the few miscues with what could have been field goals, instead fourth down attempts that just came up short. 2-point conversion play didn't come through. And then you didn't get any sort of turnover on this day. It was a pretty clean game from that respect, that Arizona State held onto the ball. But you got to give a lot of credit to them, that their defense just is good as advertised, it felt like, and they still have enough speed in the backfield between both Sims and Rayleigh Brown to be dangerous. Now, with Cincinnati losing, still I think BYU just kicked off or something I'm seeing here. Utah kicking tail. And Texas Tech is the class of the Big 12. Seems like Texas Tech's already punching their ticket to be playing in Arlington. So I don't think that Arizona State's really going to have enough. I mean, they got to win the rest of their games and have a lot of things fall for them. But I don't think that's a caliber of team that's going, especially if they rematch again against Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech would cream them in a Big 12 championship game. I really think we're destined for either a Texas Tech BYU or Texas Tech Utah game at this point in time. Those are the best three teams I feel like that we've seen this year out of the Big 12. So for West Virginia, unfortunately falling to 4-7. So that means, without a win, and I think like that's slim and none at this point in time, talking about the end of the season. So no bowl eligibility. West Virginia will get, sorry, my voice kind of cracking there. I kind of used it up on that Sincere Bowers touchdown. West Virginia goes into a bye week. I know that next week is kind of evaluations week, and they're going to talk about this entire roster. So who West Virginia wants to retain, what positions, and the roster development with their high school recruiting, and already kind of looking ahead to their transfer portal recruiting. The coaching staff is going to take a look at that. So that's what I'm going to focus on. I've been focusing on that for the last several weeks, so I'm going to finally put together an episode for you either later this week or sometime unveil over next weekend or whatever, give you something to listen to while we have a bye week. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about who have you seen? Who are your best 300 warriors, as I've said since the very beginning of the season, that you can kind of build around as a nucleus with eligibility for next year, and then kind of like how do they piece that together, and what are some of the most like top needs you feel like for this team for next season. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. It was a blast. I have some great video content from my experience at Mountain America Stadium today. I already put my notes together for that, so during the course of once I get back home and everything, I want to kind of talk about it, because I did a series 2 springs ago about the WVU football game day experience. So I'm going to compare and contrast a football game day experience at Mountain America Stadium for ASU versus West Virginia. And what I got to say right now, not to tease anything too much, but West Virginia, we are blessed. We are very, very blessed, I feel like, for what we have in our experience. Not to discredit anything about ASU. No. You'll hear my analysis from this, but we have it really good. It's a really good game day experience at West Virginia. Nothing against ASU, but just shows how good it is. So I can't wait to show that for you. I'll edit that, put that together for later this week, so something to think about. And what do you know? I want to hear your thoughts. I want to how did you feel watching this game on TV if you didn't fly out 2,500 miles away from home like I did? Really cool experience with my family. My 1-year-old daughter got to experience a college football game, a West Virginia game for the very first time, so it was awesome. Weather was excellent. It was not at all what the Weather Channel said it was going to be earlier in the week. In the mid-80s, got really hot at times. So really fun experience. One I'll never forget. Just would love to know your feedback if you watch this game at home on television, and I can kind of fill in if you have some questions on, what was it truly like being there in the stadium and what the atmosphere was like to take this one in. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it. It's really good experience, even, as a fan experience to be there, even despite the loss 25-23. And unfortunately, West Virginia is not bowl eligible, so we're only talk about one more game for the rest of this 2025 season. So please like this video if you've liked it, so it helps out the YouTube algorithm. Love to have you a subscriber to my channel. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hail West Virginia. Let's go. Spot the ball, baby.